Our past, chapter 4, in the earliest cities. Saving an old building. Jaspal and Harpreet were playing cricket in the lane outside their home when they noticed the people who were admiring the dilapidated old building that the children called the haunted house. Look at the architecture. Someone of them. Have you seen the fine wood carving? Asked one of the women. We must write to the minister so that she makes arrangement to repair and preserve this beautiful house. Why then wondered, would anybody be interested in the old rundown house? So here there is actually we have an introduction part here. Actually these two young people, they were playing, okay, and they noticed some people were admiring at a building, okay. That is almost what we call, it was used once and now it is totally broken one, okay, very old and broken one, unused building, okay. And the people were looking at it, and they were admiring the architecture means the building structures and the curving, wood curving and all other works, okay. And they had a plan of writing a letter to the minister so that this can be repaired again, okay. This is the story of Harappa. Very often old buildings have a story to tell. Nearly 150 years ago, when railway lines were being laid down for the first time in the Punjab, engineers stumbled upon the site of Harappa in present-day Pakistan. To them, it seemed like a mound that was a rich source of ready-made, high-quality bricks. So they carried off thousands of bricks from the walls of the old buildings of the city to build railway lines. Many buildings were completely destroyed. Then, about 80 years ago, archaeologists found the site and realized that this was one of the oldest cities in the subcontinent. As this was the first city to be discovered, all other sites from where similar buildings and other buildings were found were described as Harappan. These cities developed about 4,700 years ago. Okay, it was actually we are going to learn about the story of Harappa. It is a civilization took place very earlier. It was almost 150 years ago when the railway lines were laid in the area of Punjab, because in olden days Punjab and Pakistan was together, and they, when they were digging the ground or doing the work, and they found ready-made bricks, okay, and they found some old buildings, and they brought lot of very well made bricks, okay, and it was very strong. Even today you can find the old building bricks are very strong in in size, and it will be very strong, you cannot break it very easily, okay. And they, when they were making railway lines, and they built they brought a lot of bricks from there, and they built some of the lines there. And about 8 years ago, archaeologists found the site and realized the same kind of old buildings, and they found it and they made it as a name, Harappan, okay. And this civilization, these cities were developed about 4,700 years, okay. Very often old buildings are pulled down to make way for new construction. Do you think it is important to preserve old building? So how do you think? See, even in your houses in the olden days, like your grandfather parents, they built a house out of mud and all these things, okay. And after that, in your father's time, might have they destroyed everything and they built in a strong level of building, like double storied and with a lot of other technical things. Okay, and there is a kind of development taking place in our life even today. Just to calculate from 50 years before, and just to see today how far the development took place in our city, in our area, in the village, in everywhere you can find lot of developments. So in order to build the new buildings, some people destroy the old one. Some people simply they make lot of repairs and make it, and they will remove the houses. Okay, that is depend upon the people how they feel and how they like it. Okay, what was special about these cities? Many of these cities were divided into two or more parts. Usually the part to the west was smaller but higher. Okay, and archaeologists describe this as a citadel. Okay, and this is a place where actually the Harappan information they got from these particular area. Okay, and they divided into two or more parts. Like one was a smaller but higher one. Okay, generally the part to the east was larger but lower. Okay, there were two kind of area they found. So it was something like the eastern part, two kind of part they had. One was the western part. Okay, it was smaller and higher, but in the next eastern were larger but lower. Okay, this is called the lower town. Very often walls of big bricks were built around each part. The bricks were so well made that they have lasted for thousands of years. The bricks were laid in an interlocking pattern and that made the walls strong. Okay, so this is how they made the house. Okay, and they had a different type of areas like lower level and the higher level. Okay, the bricks were, as I said to you earlier, it was very strong, and see, it lasts for more than thousands of years. Even today, we find that kind of good bricks, and they are locked with one another. The interlocking pattern they made so that the walls were very strong. Okay, we cannot destroy it very easily. Okay, and in some cities, special buildings were constructed on the citadel. For example, in Mohenjo-daro, a very special tank, which archaeologists call the Great Bath, was built in the area. This was lined with bricks, coated with plasters, and made watertight with a layer of natural tar. There were steps leading down to it from two sides, while there were rooms on all sides. Water was probably brought in from the well and drained out after use. Perhaps important people took a dip in this tank on special occasions. Other cities such as Kalibangan and Lothal had fire altars where sacrifices may have been performed. And some cities like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and Lothal had elaborate store houses. See, here we find a lot of information from these special cities, two, three cities, okay, and especially from Mohenjo-daro and Lothal, okay, and Harappa. We get a lot of information from the buildings which they found, okay, and in Mohenjo-daro there was a special built tank, okay, and it was made up of what we call brick and coated with plasters, and it was watertight. Okay, no water leakage is there, and they layered with natural tar. They were totally coated with tar so that the water is not going out. Okay, and this might have used for a special people to have a dip on it. After the use, the water also would drain out. Okay, there they had a provision of that sort. And one more city in Lothal and Kalibangan, and there is a fire altar. So it shows that there were a lot of sacrifices were made and performed. Okay, this is the area. Okay, see, this is the area of Mohenjo-daro. So this is old India map. Okay, these all places, even Pakistan was included in India. Okay, after the independence, this country were divided. Okay, so before that it was joined together. So here they found this kind of, this is the Indus River. Okay, Indus River, and flows and comes to Punjab and all the areas. Okay, and that's why it is also called the Indus Valley civilization. Okay, all the civilization took place near the rivers. Okay, and here we see. Okay, these are the areas. Even in Gujarat, Lothal, okay, Sudkothada, and this area, Tolavira. So these are the area where they have found lot of buildings, old building related to these Mohenjo-daro and Harappa civilization. Okay, and see, these are the buildings. See, in the many years back, this is a great bath. So this is a way they made the bathtub. Okay, and drainage system and many more things we can find. Okay, house, drains and street. Generally houses were either one or two story height with room built around courtyard. Most houses had a separate bathing area and some had wells to supply water. Many of these cities had covered drains. Notice how carefully these were laid out in straight lines, although you cannot see it. Each drain had a gentle slope so that the water could flow through it. Very often, drains in houses were connected to those on the streets, and smaller drains led into bigger ones. As the drains led into bigger ones, as the drains were covered, inspections holes were provided at intervals to clean them. All three houses, drains, and streets were probably planned and built at the same time. See, so you can find the streets were very straight street. Okay, and they had a kind of covered drainage system. Each house had a drainage system. Every water will connected to the same drainage outlet, and there will be small one and a wider one in every area. There is a covering open area, small open or inspection holes where they can clean it very occasionally. Okay, and see, this is how they made the buildings. It was very wonderfully they made even those days. See, even today it is very strong. How many years it crossed? Even today it is. It is very strong, and almost actually now it is in the ground level, but it is very strong and fine work. Okay, see, here we find life in the city of Harappa. Okay, a Harappan city was very busy place. There was people who planned and constructed special buildings in the city. There was probably rulers. Okay, so when they talk about Harappan villages, cities and all, they tell that it is a very busy city because there were rulers. It was buildings constructed very properly, and even rulers sent people to distant lands to get metals, precious stones, and other things that they wanted. Okay, and see, they brought lot of metals from different places and they made buildings. Okay, and they might have kept lot of valuable objects such as ornaments or gold, silver, beautiful beads, and they preserved inside these buildings. Okay, and there were scribes, people who knew how to write, who helped prepare the seals and perhaps wrote other materials that have not survived. Okay, even they had people, they are called scribes, or the kind of teachers. They can read and write, and they will make seals and some kind of writings and some materials, but they are not found even today. Okay. Beside, there were men and women, craft persons, making all kind of things either in their own house or in a special workshop. People were traveling to distant lands and returning with raw materials and perhaps stories. Okay, many terracotta toys have been found, and a long time ago, children must have played with these. Okay, by seeing all these buildings, they have a story to tell or the information to give. Like they travel to many other areas and brought a lot of metals, and they made things and they made ornaments. Even they used it for themselves. And they also say that there were craftsmen. Some people, women and men, they were craft persons. Even they used to make it in their homes or they made it in a special workshops commonly, and they used to travel to distant places and return with lot of materials and lot of stories. Okay, new things they invented there, and they will come up with lot of stories. And there were some kind of toys. It must have been used for children to play. Okay, and make a list of people who lived in the city. Were any of these people listed as living in villages such as Merghur? Okay, there we have a lot of information and some of the information about the pictures. Okay, street of Mohenjo-daro, drainage. Okay, here there is a well, there is a drainage area. Okay, and here Harappan seal. Okay, some of the seals and the signs of the top. See, these are the signal boards. Okay. Uh, these are the toys children used to play. Okay, and here new craft in the city. Let us look at some of the objects that were made and found in Harappan cities. Most of the things that have been found by archaeologists are made of stone, shell, and metal, including copper, bronze, gold, and silver. Copper and bronze were used to make tools, weapons, ornaments, and vessels. Gold and silver were used to make ornaments and vessels. Perhaps the most striking finds are those of beads, weight, and blades. Okay. The Harappans also made seals out of stones. These are generally rectangular. See illustration on page 35. So these are the seals. Okay. And the Harappans also made pots with beautiful black designs such as one shown in page 6. So here we have some of the craft items. So people used lot of metals. They used shells, metals, including copper, gold, and bronze, silver, and they all used it for making ornaments, weapons. Okay, and see stone weights. Okay, today we have weights like in the metal, but they used it as a weight in those days. So these are the images. They made lot of things. Okay. Cotton was probably grown in Meherder from about 7,000 years ago. Actual pieces of cloth were found attached to the lid of silver vase and some copper objects at Mohenjo-daro. Archaeologists have also found spindle boards made of terracotta and iron. These were used to spin thread. Many of the things that were produced were probably the work of specialists. A specialist is a person who is trained to do only one kind of work. For example, cutting stone, polishing beads, or curving seals. Looking at the illustration, page number 36, and see how well the face of is curved and how carefully the beard is shown. This must have been the work of an expert craftsman. Not everybody could have been a specialist. We do not know whether only men were specialists or only women were specialists, perhaps some women and men may have been specialists. See, here we find, see, these are the objects they made. See how fine they made it. Okay, they made the beard, and they made everything very clearly, and they made it in a fine manner. See these metals and everything. So usually there were some skillful people. Okay, it can be men or women, and they were specialists in making some of the things. Okay, and there were a lot other objects they were used to make other this kind of tools or ornaments. Okay, and these are the information that we can know about the people who lived very long back in these areas. Okay, in search of a raw material. Raw materials are substances that are either found naturally or produced by farmers or herders. These are then processed to produce finished goods. For example, cotton produced by farmers is a raw material that may be processed to make cloth, while some other raw material that Harappan used were available locally. Many items such as copper, tin, gold, silver, and precious stones had to be brought from distant places. The Harappans probably got copper from present day Rajasthan and even from Oman. In West Asia, tin, which was mixed with copper to produce bronze, may have been brought from present day Afghanistan and Iran. Gold could have come all the way from present day Karnataka, and precious stones from present day Gujarat, Iran, and Afghanistan. See, you just imagine, see, in those days, people traveled to many places. See, we have some list of names and the raw materials they brought from. See, just to think about Rajasthan, woman is a West Asian, it is another country, and they travel to Karnataka to bring gold, and they travel to Afghanistan, Iran, Gujarat, Afghanistan. Okay, they travel to many places to bring lot of raw materials like cotton, gold, silver, bronze, stones, and many more items. They brought it from different places and made these kind of very well designed ornaments and tools. Okay, see, usually they were very skillful people, because even today we can see the wells are very well made. It was good. You see, it is good in shape, and the streets were very well planned in a structured manner. See, every houses they made with a good plan of storage and outlet. They had a bathing area. They had a straight, street, and they play items, shields, and many things they made. Even they had a lot of ornaments made out of silver, gold, and all other metals. Okay, and they had even the archaeologists found some of the cloths, like cotton cloths, and it was kept or wrapped around some pots or some of the items they used. They found it there. Okay, and these are the information and the materials that gives us lot about their lifestyle and their skills. Okay, they were very skillful people, and they just think about 1,000 years, 1,500 years before, people had such a quality of work. They had a good mind, creative work. Okay, but they did not have any kind of development that we had today. We have lot of machines, and we are doing everything by machine. Okay, and the metals that we use and the tools we use today is not were not available in those days, but they made such a fine shaped buildings and structures, statues, play items. It was really wonderful to see how the people of Harappan were talented. Okay, food for people in the cities. While many people lived in cities, others lived in the countryside, grew crops, reared animals. These farmers and herders supplied food to craft persons, scribes, and rulers in the city. We know from remains of plants that the Harappan grew wheat, barley, pulses, peas, rice, sesame, uh, linseeds, and mustard. A new tool, the plow. See, these plow item, even today people used to, plow the land, like, these kind of tools, right? Okay, and was used to dig the earth for turning the soil and planting seeds, while real plows and which were probably made of wood have not survived. Toy models have been formed. As this region does not receive heavy rainfall, some from the irrigations may have been used. Some form of irrigation method used. This means that water was stored and supplied to the fields when the plants were growing. The Harappan reared cattle, sheep, goats, buffaloes. Water and pastures were available around settlements. However, in the dry summer months, large herds of animals were probably taken to greater distance in search of grass, water. They also collected fruits like bird, caught fish, and hunted wild animals like the antelopes. Okay, and here we have some information about food and their culture. Okay, food habits. Okay, and usually the rulers, main people, some people they lived in the cities, and some people live in the villages, like we call it, countryside. They call it countryside today. We call it as a village. Okay, and the countryside people or the villagers were farmers. They were growing lot of food items. They had lot of food items like wheat, barley, pulses. Even those days, they used to plant and grow these kind of items, and they also reared some animals like goat, buffaloes, sheep, cattle. So they had lot of things, and they used to give food to the people who lived in the cities. Okay, and there is a plow. Actually, we don't find any remaining of these things, but they have like, play toys. So that resembles that they used these kind of materials or the weapons or the tools to plow the land. And during summer area, or these areas were not received heavy rainfall, so they had a storage of water, and they used to supply during their plantations. Okay, during the time of their planting seeds and all. Okay, and that is how they maintained their food habits, and they developed the plants to grow. And a closer look, Harappan town in Gujarat. The city of Dolavira was located in Khadir in the Ran of Kutch, where there were fresh water and fertile soil. See, you can notice one more thing here. So they were eating all these kind of pulses, rice, atta and everything they used, and they also were they were catching fish and hunting wild animals for their food. Okay, and and the cities, some of the closer look we find here in the Gujarat area, unlike some of the other Harappan cities which were divided into two parts, Dolavira was divided into three parts, and each part was surrounded with massive stone walls with entrances through gateways. There was also large open area in the settlements where public ceremonies could be held. Other finds include large letters of Harappan script that were carved out of white stone and perhaps inlaid in wood. This is a unique find as generally Harappan writing has been found on the small objects such as seals. See, the Harappan people, even actually in Gujarat, some of the area, as we saw in the map, some of the areas even today, okay, these are the areas the Harappan, the civilization took place. Okay, Dolivira, Surkotada, Lothal. Even today, we can find these are the buildings we can find it there in the area of Gujarat. Okay, in these areas. Okay, maybe if you get time as a family, if your parents are ready to visit, you can go with them and visit these places. It is really wonderful to see our old people how they lived. And see, in Gujarat, we find some of the areas. In Dolivira, the buildings, the area was divided into three parts, and there were surrounded massive stone walls, like compound walls, and they had a gate, okay, entrance gate, and they had an open area, like ceremony areas, and they found large letters, Harappan scripts. It was written in the white stones, and it might have inlaid in the wood. Like even today, people used to place the stone, writing stones on the walls and all. Okay, the same way they might have kept it on the wood. Okay, and the other way, the same thing. Even today, we can find lot of Harappan writings and some seals and objects we find in Gujarat, this area called Dholvira. And one more city, Lothal, stood beside the tributary of the Sabarmati in Gujarat, close to the Gulf of Compass. Okay, it was situated near area where raw materials such as semi-precious stones were easily available. This was an important center for making objects out of stones, shells, and metals. There was also a storehouse in the city, many seals and ceilings, the impression of seals and clay were found in this storehouse. See, in the one more city that is also in Gujarat, the city of Lothal, they found a lot of seals and metal seals. They made out of shell and metals, and some seals are there and some kind of objects there, and there is a big storehouse. Okay, and it is assumed that this is the place of raw material, like the uh, such as semi-precious stones were easily available. From local area, they got this kind of precious stones, and they had a making place. This was the making place or the center for making objects out of stone. Was also found there. Okay, see here, a dockyard at Lothal. This huge tank may have been a dockyard where boats and ships came in from the sea through the river channel goods were see. So this is a big area, okay, through which this it was connected with the river or sea. The goods were brought to this area with the help of boat. So really, we should appreciate them and honor them, because I know in those days, nearly 1,500 years back, people lived in such a decent and cultured life. Means it is amazing. A building that was found here was probably a workshop for making beads, pieces of stones, half-made beads, tools of beads making, and furnished beads have all been found there. See, and they have found a building also, big building. It was probably a workshop. Okay, this is a seal. Okay, the mystery of the end. Around 3,900 years ago, we find the beginning of a major change. People stopped living in many of the cities. Writing, seals, and weights were no longer used. Raw materials brought from long distances become rare. In Mohenjo-daro, we find that garbage piled up on the streets, the drainage system broke down, and new, less impressive houses were built even over the streets. Why did all this happen? We are not sure. Some scholars suggest that the river dried up, others suggest that there was a deforestation. This could have happened. So, what we call in Mohenjo-daro, we find that garbage. Okay, these are the areas. In fact, for after around 3,900 years ago, we find the beginning of a major change. The some of the areas, they had the raw materials brought from long distance become very rare, and the garbage piled upon the streets, and drainage system were broken, and it means the people, they move to other areas, and when the areas is not in use, this kind of negative result took place, because during their lifetime, they lived in a proper and clean way. Okay, they cleaned up everything, they checked the drainage system very occasionally, and they had a very system of living. But when they found these kind of things, like the piling up of the garbages, and the what we call drainage system was broken down, and they found that the people might have moved to some other area, it is because of the deforestation, or the rivers might have dried up. Okay, this could have happened because fuel was required for baking bricks, or for some smelting copper ores. Beside grazing by large herds of cattle, sheep, or goats may be destroyed the green cover. Okay, in some areas there were flood. Okay, so these reasons could be the main reason why the people left this place. Okay, that is because of they might have were in struggle of getting fuels for baking bricks. Okay, and there were no enough grass for their cattle or and sheep, and it also, there is a chance of floods coming, so that they left the place and they went to some other areas. Okay, but none of these reasons can explain the end of all these cities. Flooding or a river drying up would have had an effect in only some areas. Okay, these things could have happened in only some areas, but nobody knows why they left the place. Okay, see, such a developed and good living they had, but immediately after these many years, they left the place, and they left everything and they went out. And it appears as if the rulers lost control. In any case, the effect of the change are quite clear. Sites in Sindh and the West Punjab, present day Pakistan, were abandoned, while many people moved into newer, smaller settlements to the east and the south. New cities emerged in about 1400 years later. You will read about them in chapter next. Okay, 6 and 9. Okay, see, it appears the rulers also, it also can be the reason, because the rulers were defeated, and they chased out by some other people. And we can find these kind of effects, like in the area of Pakistan, Sindhi area, and Punjab, some of the areas, and people, the areas were abandoned. Abandoned means totally left out. No inhabitants were there, and they moved to south and east area. So that is all about the the Harappan developments, civilization, and maybe rest of the things we can learn it in the chapter 6 and 9. Okay, here we have an information, like find Egypt in your atlas. Most of Egypt is a dry desert except for the land along the river Nile. Around 5,000 years ago, kings ruled over Egypt. These kings sent armies to distant lands to get gold, silver, ivory, timber, and precious stones. They also built huge tombs known as pyramids. When they died, the bodies of kings were preserved and buried in these pyramids. These carefully preserved bodies are known as mummies. A large number of objects were also buried with them. These included food and drink, clothes, ornaments, utensils, musical instruments, weapons, and animals. Okay. Sometimes even serving men and women were buried with the rulers. These are amongst the most elaborate burial known in world history. See, in the Egyptian map, you can find these kind of pyramids, and over 500 years ago, the rulers or the kings, they ruled over the entire land of Egypt, and they send armies to distant places to get these kind of metals like gold, silver, ivory, timbers, and they made lot of stones and many kind of ornaments for them, and they also build huge tombs. These are tombs, they are called pyramids, and they, after the death of kings and rulers, they preserved them and buried them in the pyramids, and they are called mummies. Okay, and they also buried some other items like food, drinks, clothes, ornaments, utensils, and some musical instruments, weapons, animals. Okay, sometimes even the serving men and women also were buried along with the rulers. See, these are amongst the most elaborate burials known in the world history. So you can see lot of videos about these pyramids and mummies. Okay, and that is all about this chapter. Okay, and we will see the book exercise and all other things in the next video.